Oh, welcome back everyone. I'm just making another video to help you with some work out of the textbook here on our chapter on negative numbers. Now, we're doing some work looking at the order of operations, and we'll probably use BODMAS, and I'd really like you to write BODMAS on the top of your page. And it may even be worth writing BIDMAS. In BODMAS, the O for me, that stands for other mathematical operations. And believe me, there's a lot of them that you need to do in the bigger context of mathematics. At the moment, that O you understand brackets, and then you hit the O, and everyone's a little bit sketchy on what we actually do there. So it might pay to write BIDMAS, because a few of the examples today we will be looking at the indexes. And if we write BIDMAS, that's a trigger to do the brackets first, then look at the powers or the indices, and then go ahead with the division and the multiplication, addition, subtraction stuff down the other end. All right. So while we're talking about brackets, here's my card again. This card's getting recycled quite a bit. Here's -5, and there's brackets that make a lot of sense, and then there's brackets like this that just, I think what they're doing is helping you to see that as a -5. Okay, did you really need the brackets there? Some students get a little bit confused, and they look inside this set of brackets, understanding that BODMAS tells them to do the work inside the brackets first. So they come in here and they go, oh, what do I actually do in here? Nothing. Because these sets of brackets here are just to help you see that this is -5, and they can be distracting. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, once you know and see that as a negative number, I'm going to ask you to remove that set of brackets. Better still, we can, to help us do our mathematics in the correct order, we can insert brackets. So if you've got a question that is, say, I don't know, 5 plus 2 times 3, you might put a set of brackets around the 2 times 3, because BODMAS tells you to do the multiplication before the addition. So inserting your brackets in the correct spot actually helps you see what you need to do. So we'll practice that behind the light board, and I've got a really good question that I'll finish with, that the answer is obvious, and all the real work to get the sign correct, and that's where the thinking takes place. The answers in the number is staring us in the face, and the sign is a tricky bit. So I've got a really good question to help finish with that incorporates all this sort of work. Okay. Now, we're up to the stage where we're dealing with negative numbers, and we've accumulated a few skills. We've practiced them separately. Now we're bringing them together. So what I've written down here is kind of important, and I've got a couple of little things that we need to remember in this unit. The first one is subtract a negative, and we're adding the opposite. So if I just used an example over here, we might have 2 subtract a -5. What we're going to do there is change the signs, add the opposite, and we end up with +7 as our answer there. We need to remember that, and when we see it, we need to use that strategy, and in that specific moment do what I just did there. The second point is that when we're multiplying or dividing, remember This could be a division sign in here. We've got to think about the signs. And if they're opposite signs, our answer over here, our answer will be a negative. And if the signs are the same, and what we've got to look out for, the one that requires the thinking is when we've got a negative number times a negative number, or again, it could be a division sign in there. When we're in that situation where we have two negative numbers, our answer will be a positive. Okay? And the third thing to think about, especially what we're doing here, is we're going to be doing some BODMAS. And my tip for you is to write BODMAS out, and you could even change this to BIDMAS, because there'll be some index laws that we need to be aware of at some point through the work that we're doing today. So on that note, there's two things that we learned from the end of the last lesson when we're looking at index laws. We're looking at, say, -2. And every time that -2 was raised to an even power, the answer was a positive. Okay? Positive, whatever it was. And when -2 was raised to an odd power, the answer was negative. So we've just got to keep that in mind. That applies, and that holds true for all the work that we're doing. So when you see the work, and I promised there was a question at the end here where we would sort of, it boils down to what's this action here. So that's why I've got it there. That's why I've written it down. And I would suggest write it down on your page today, because the act of writing is going to help you remember and embed this stuff in your mind. So let's begin with some numbers and let's have a look. You might have something like this: 5 plus 2 times 3. I think I used that example there. And there's no brackets here. So as we go through BODMAS, we might see the multiplication. And my tip for you is you can use brackets and insert them into the right locations, and it helps you to see what to do. So in this situation here, we've got 5 plus 2 times 3 is 6, and the answer there is 11. No big deal. We might even put positive 11 there. We've had no signs to deal with here. They're all positive, and we could have made that explicit by putting those signs in to help you there. So let's change the game a little bit. Let's do the same question again. I might change my color of my pen here, and let's mess around with making one of these a negative. So let's try that. It's going to roll the same sort of way, but hey, we've got inside the brackets here, we've got -2 times -3, opposite signs. So my overall answer here will be -6. Now you can write it like that, and you can think of this as 5 plus a -6, or you're most welcome to change it to 5 minus 6, and that takes us to the negative side of 0, and our answer there is -1. Okay. What we could do next, we could use the same question again. Let's change this and put it, instead of a plus, let's put a negative, and let's keep this the same. We've only changed one thing, but let's see what difference this makes. And inside the brackets here, we've got a -6. So this time round, we've got 5 subtract a -6. And now that is a cue for us to use point number 1 back over here. We've got subtract a negative, so we change the signs to positive, or I think about it as plus positive when I do this. But what we're actually doing, we're adding the opposite. So here in this situation here, we end up at positive 11 as our answer. So they're the things to think about. And I'll just quickly clean the board here and let's tackle a slightly different question and see what we can do. So you might have something like this: negative 6 times 2 subtract 10 divided by a negative 5 in brackets or something like that. That might be printed in your book and you can copy it down exactly that way, or you can do a little bit of work here. I would, if this was me and that's what I saw, I'd be writing this. Subtract, I'm going to make it big because the addition subtraction is one of the last things I do, and I'm making it a little reminder to myself that I still need to do that, but I'm going to set it up like this, 10 divided by negative 5, and see how I used, the brackets weren't there. These ones don't really mean much, by the way. We've talked about that quite a bit. So I know I've got to eventually subtract things, but I've got a multiplication and a division to do. Now, I'm just going to do the multiplication here in front of me first, and I've got minus 12 as my answer here. And then I come over here and do the work over here. I've got 10 divided by 5, so let's do the numbers first. So 10, how many 5s? The answer to that is 2. One of these signs is a negative, so they're opposite signs, so this has to be negative 2. And now I'm free to do the final bit of work here, and I'm going to have to change the signs there because I'm in that situation where I've got subtract a negative, I'm adding the opposite. So my final answer here is minus 10. And there's a lot going on and a lot of thinking, but all the information I needed to answer these questions is here in dot point 1 and dot point 2. So it's always a good idea to write that stuff down before you start, especially as you're learning to do all this kind of thing. You've got a whole series of decisions to make about the signs, and that's the whole point of this unit, is making those decisions. Now, this is an example here where BIDMAS comes in here, the indices, and this is I think a really good question because what does it do? It gets you thinking about the signs, and that's what we're here for while we're doing this unit. The answer to this, like I said, it's staring you in the face. 1 times 1 is 1. Divided by 1 is still 1. So our answer is 1. I'm just going to put a big fat 1 there. But there's something that I need to sort out here in this box here, is we need to decide on the sign. And that's a key bit to this question, okay? So different ways I'm looking at it. I'm seeing these powers here, and I know that minus 1 times minus 1 is going to be even. So look at the way I'm answering this question. I know that first part is going to be a positive number multiplied by a negative number. And when I drop down to the denominator, I've got an odd power there, so I know that is going to be negative times another negative number. So just what do we need to do? We need to tidy this up, and on the numerator up the top here I've got opposite signs, so that's going to be negative. But underneath here I have got on the denominator here a negative number multiplied by another negative number, and that's going to give me a positive number. Okay, so purely just thinking through, even though I knew the answer was -1, and the reason why I wanted to run through this question with you was that it's a great opportunity just to be thinking about what's happening here, and it's purely just concentrating on what's happening with the signs and not the number. So that's what makes it a great question, and it's in your textbook, and I'd really like you to give that one a go, and a few others like it. Okay, thank you.